from Chili Bottom to London. A strange-looking man looked out the airplane window and said, "Wow, what bad weather. I should have stayed home." He was going to London for the first time. He had never left Antarctica before. He lived in a village called Chili Bottom, near the South Pole. At the airport, a grumpy officer asked for his passport. The man didn't have one, but he had important papers. He said, "I have a message for the king. Please let me through." The officer was confused. The man explained that he was from British Antarctic Territory and showed his papers. The officer looked at them and said, "Wait here." A woman came and said, "You can go see the king." A fancy car took him to the palace. The man asked the driver, "Does the king keep penguins in cages for fun?" The driver didn't answer. The man was curious. He was excited to meet the king and learn about England. He wore a funny hat and used old-fashioned words, but he was a friendly man from a very cold place. The driver didn't look at Bobby, but said, "I don't know about prisoners, sir." Bobby asked, "Why is it always cloudy and rainy here?" "In Antarctica, it's cold, but we have blue skies." The driver replied, "You didn't come to Mallorca, sir." They arrived at Buckingham Palace, and a red carpet rolled out. A man in black formal wear greeted Bobby. "I'm Sir John, the king's butler," he said. Bobby asked, "Why are you dressed like a penguin?" Sir John smiled and said, "The king will see you tomorrow. Let's have tea." They sat in a cozy room, and servants brought tea and snacks. Sir John asked, "Tell me about Chili Bottom." Bobby said, "We live near the South Pole. We sing, worship penguin gods, and drink tea with seal oil. Penguins bring us food and keep us warm." Sir John looked surprised. "You worship penguin gods?" Bobby replied, "Yes, they help us survive." Sir John asked, "How do you speak English so well if you've never left Antarctica?" Bobby said, "My uncle met an African penguin once, but that's all. I'm the first person from Chili Bottom to leave Antarctica," Bobby said. "We learned English from a book my great-grandfather found in the snow. We loved the language and started using it instead of the penguin tongue." The butler nodded. "That's fascinating. But why are you here?" Bobby replied, "We heard that your king keeps penguins in a zoo. I demand that he release them." The butler said, "But are you a British citizen?" Bobby was offended. "Of course I am. Chili Bottom is a British Antarctic territory. Your king claimed it. And I've always known I'm British." The butler apologized and offered to show Bobby around the city. They went to a pub and Bobby tried fish and chips, but he didn't like the beer. "It's flat and has no fizz," he exclaimed. Fitzwilliam Patrick explained, "It's English beer, but I think you prefer lager. Let me order you a French beer instead, just between us." He whispered, "The king prefers British beer, but I won't tell." Bobby was confused, but he liked the new word, snappy, which meant fast. Bobby looked around the pub and saw ugly carpet, sticky furniture, and drunk old men. He felt emotional thinking about this pub tradition. The waitress brought out fish and chips, but Bobby didn't like the green stuff, mushy peas. He spat it out and said it was worse than rotten penguin poop. Fitzwilliam Patrick apologized and took him back to the palace. Bobby slept poorly and missed his sealskin and the sound of the sea. The next morning, Fitzwilliam Patrick took him to meet the king. Bobby was surprised to see the king dressed like a factory worker and eating toast and eggs. The king said, "Call me Charlie, please." But Bobby was skeptical. The king proved his identity and showed Bobby a £10 note with his picture on it. The king showed Bobby a £10 note with his picture on it. Bobby was surprised and asked the king to release the penguins at the London Zoo. The king was puzzled and asked his footman, Wilkins, if there were penguins at the zoo. Wilkins said yes, and the king explained that the zoo wasn't his responsibility. Bobby told the king about how his village, Chili Bottom, worshipped penguins as gods, and how they learned English from a book. The king listened carefully and said he might be able to help. He asked Bobby to come back the next day at 8 a.m. the next morning. Bobby found the king looking tired and messy, surrounded by papers and old books. The king exclaimed, "I think we have a solution, Bobby. As king, I can claim ownership of the penguins and set them free." Bobby was overjoyed and thanked the king. 2 days later, all 73 penguins from the London Zoo flew back to Chili Bottom on a special plane, and Bobby went with them. He was happy to have saved his gods and couldn't wait to return home. In his diary, Bobby wrote, "I'm leaving London now. The people here have a funny accent. The weather is worse than a sick seal's bottom, and they've never even heard of rotten penguin poo. But I'm glad I came, and I'm happy to be going home with my beloved penguins. It's been an amazing adventure." The king said, "I can help you, Bobby. There's an old law from 1314 that says the king can claim ownership of any bird in the British Empire if there's a good reason. And protecting your religious beliefs is a good reason. You and your village, Chili Bottom, are part of the British Antarctic Territory, which makes you one of my subjects. I must ensure your religious beliefs are protected." Bobby was overjoyed and thanked the king again and again. 2 days later, all 73 penguins from the London Zoo waddled onto a special plane, and Bobby went with them. He was happy to have saved his gods and couldn't wait to return home. In his diary, Bobby wrote, "I'm leaving London now. The people here have a funny accent. The weather is worse than a sick seal's bottom, and they've never even heard of rotten penguin poo. But I'm glad I came, and I'm happy to be going home with my beloved penguins. It's been an amazing adventure."